Hello, you are welcome again to the second session of our understanding of criticism. How a work of art is created. Sophocles took into consideration the life of the great king Oedipus Tyrannus, Oedipus the king, and he did not want to write the story as it was, as it happened to him. He distorted it to bring it to an end that would move us, that will show how the world should be. If one commits an error, how will his story take a turn? How will his life, the consequence of that act, how will that determine the formation of his character? When this was produced, people were moved to pity. They were wondering about why at all should have Oedipus come to such a catastrophic end. But that is not the task of a writer, a poet, the maker, to take a story as it is and just put it forth, because it would then be documentation of history. It wouldn't be literature. Literature doesn't deal with what is. The subject, the concept of literature is not to present what is, it is to present what should be. And with that, Sophocles gave to us the idea that if anyone knowingly or unknowingly would do something against the social and moral norms, will come to sadness, will come to pain, and will also come to anguish. Plato, who was the political thinker and the political guru of the Greeks, did not much like the idea of telling a story that will move the people to tears. So he objected to writing down such works of art. His first objection was on aesthetic grounds, and which he said that since the story is removed from reality, it does not tell what actually happened, but has deviated from the sequence of action, so it should be banned. It should be banned because the reality has not been presented. Plato was an idealist, and he wanted things to be presented as they were. And the aesthetic grounds confirmed the fact that the story has been written differently from what it was. The imitation was not perfect. He also objected to the stories on the moral grounds that gods have been presented in an adverse light. And if the power that we believe in, the power from whom we seek inspiration, if that is presented in hostile terms, we will be led astray as audience. And the third, the most important, was that he said such writings make people weak. His work was to prepare citizens of a strong Greece. And if people read these stories that moved them to pity and fear, will cause unrest among the people. There was a criticism of life as presented by Sophocles. And when it was read by Plato, there was yet another criticism. But here, criticism never ends. It is a cult that goes on whenever a mind that is sharp, eyes that an understanding that is sensitive will brew yet another understanding of this term. And Aristotle, who was this disciple of Plato, took up these challenges before him and wrote down a treatise by the name Poetics, in which he documented not to present it as a work of literature, but just to give inspiration to the people that not every time in life will idealism work. There has to be a realism somewhere. We have to take things as they are. We have to accept them as they have been presented and appreciate them looking at the good side of the thing presented. So when the objection about the thing, about the story being removed from reality was presented, Aristotle championed his thought and said that reality is something which is perceived by our senses and may be misleading. He said it is removed from reality, but it is a truth perceived by the souls. Though the story of Oedipus is removed from reality, there has been a deviation in bringing an end to the life of Oedipus. But if it was presented as it did, then we would not have learnt anything. It would not have given a message to society, unlike history, which just documents the truths, the facts as they were. He said it is an imitation, but imitation is in our instinct. A, a chick will definitely want to move as the hen does. A fish will naturally swim. A child will very instinctually copy the parents. So imitation is in our instinct. We tend to imitate anyone who we are inspired by. So if a story gives us an inspiration, if it appeals somewhere to our heart in the instincts, it is advisable to the improbable reality, to the impossible real occurrence that might happen. The second advocacy that he offered against the imitation, he said imitation gives us pleasure. See, if someone behaves in a particular manner, the person might not catch our appreciation. But if this action is imitated by someone else, we are overjoyed. Mime. To copy someone always brings pleasure. So, the very important principle of pleasure is associated with imitation. So, this is how Aristotle gave his answer to the objections of this work of literature being an imitation and being far removed from reality. Aristotle supported the idea and said that imitation is in our instinct and it gives pleasure. Then, the very important argument which Plato gave against the literature being a source of evoking pity and fear in the mind of its readers, in its audience, then it should be banned. But Aristotle took this point up and gave his argument very readily and very promptly, very logically, to say that these two feelings, the emotions of pity and fear, are those emotions which are needed in a human existence. Because we pity someone, there is a sense of going close to the suffering of that person. Unless we feel the pangs, we feel the pain that other one is going through, our humanity has not culminated. Let us take an example. There is a feast going on in the family, and the house is very beautifully decorated, and there are rich people pouring in, only to throw away good food in dustbins maybe, and there is a hungry urchin standing outside. And you perceive him as a blot upon the beautiful presentation that you have done for your guests. And you shoo him away without giving him a piece of bread that you could have accorded, that which lies in the dustbins. If you could save that, and if you could give to him, would that not be a fulfillment of the human, the desire to be human? So pity is what that makes us human being. And fear. Fear is withdrawal, moving away from that abhorring side, from that painful side, from that tragic side. We should feel fear. It is a very strong emotion that keeps us on track. We are told the stories of demons and of gods, though we have seen none, but the fear of demon and the confirmation that God will rid you is something that we all seek for. We have not seen God, but every time that we are doing a wrong, and because we were told a story of how God helps those who are good and punishes those who are bad, that fear, it rings into your mind a feeling of withdrawal. So pity and fear are the two emotions, the purification of which is accorded by such tragic stories where a man errs. His error teaches us not to do it again. And thereby Aristotle gave this beautiful principle of catharsis. Catharsis is purification. We are purged, we are cleaned, just as an ore is burnt away in a purgatory only to leave behind the pure metal. So also tragedies, when they are witnessed, we learn from them. There is a vaccination in our minds that keep us away from these sins, from these weaknesses of art, the flaws that every character has. We all are flawed in some way or the other. But when we see a flawed character meandering through commitment of error, reversal of fortunes, realization of sins, and then meeting his catastrophic end, we learn. We learn how to abstain. That induces into us that therapeutic treatment that we have to keep away from it. So, this is what Aristotle offered as his argument, his objections against the objections of Plato. And this is how the process of criticism goes on. We look at things, we comment. Then the comment is perceived and read by someone else, and he puts in his comment on that, his observation, and this is how life is made worthwhile. We learn from the writings. When we read them, we are traveling with the protagonist. We are we are as if in the drama, going with the character, experiencing all pain, all happiness that he suffers. We are with him. We live with him. And we are introduced to the facts that a man might succumb to the weakness of his character at a point of time. But whether he did it forcefully, driven by his own desire, or unwittingly, he would meet with the tragic end. This is criticism of life as presented by Sophocles. The objections are again a criticism of life as offered by Plato, the idealist. But then a convincing theory was laid down by Aristotle in his realistic point of view, in which he promoted the theory of truth being at the crux of the matter. We should not bother just about the reality perceived, because each one might have his reality. A 9, because I sit on this side, I can see it as a 9. And the one sitting next to me is since lying down, would appreciate it as a 6 further. So a thing is not a thing by itself. It gains dimensions on the basis of the viewer, and we can view things as real or unreal. But the truth is objective. It remains the same, and the objective truth about tragedies is, however, they make us suffer from the emotions of pity and fear, but the truth is, they purify us. When we see the person who could have risen to heights fall because of a weakness or a flaw, we fall with him. But when he falls down and dies, we are cleansed of the weakness forever and forever. Thank you. We shall continue further, and assistance, the lecture, the concept that was laid down today could be gathered with a small appreciation of it in Hindi on my own personal site, on my own personal YouTube channel, and I would suggest you kindly follow that. If this has not brought home to you the topic, because this was a dictation to present this theme in English. So the ones who need it to be delivered also in Hindi, a parallel of it could be given in Hindi and in English, should kindly follow the link that I am presenting in the description box. Thank you so much. Happy fairing.